to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. It appears that Maisy Rose will be returning to action before this year is out next month in December. This is the same show I talked about in my previous video. It's a Matchroom show, but on a small scale, smaller than most of Matchroom's other shows. It's the same show where Shannon Ryan is going to be making her ring return as well. What those two fighters have in common, they both compete in the super flyweight division, they both campaign there, and they're both on the bounce, they're both on the rebound. Having suffered their first professional losses in their last fights, this is their chance to get back in the winner's bracket, get some momentum going. So up until this point, Shannon Ryan and Maisy Rose had both been competing and campaigning as super flyweights. For this fight, it appears that Maisy Rose is moving down from superfly down to fly. That might be a good idea. She's actually on the smaller, much smaller end of the spectrum as far as super flyweights go, that she can fit right in at flyweight. 24 years old, sporting a professional record of 6 wins with 1 loss, no draws, no recorded knockouts, not yet, but if you've seen Maisy in action, you'll know she can punch. There is some mustard on that hot dog, even if she hasn't knocked anybody out yet. She's very aggressive, very strong, and that was at super flyweight. I've no doubt she'll still be strong as a flyweight. So in her last fight, she was in there with Poland's own Jasmina Sopotnicka, a long and limber fighter, a wiry fighter, fleet of foot, able to move. Very good. She was effectively able to outmaneuver and out-hustle Maisy Rose, who has the look of a pressure fighter, has the look of a mid-range to inside pressure fighter, but still doesn't have all the bells and whistles, still is rough around the edges, and a pressure fighter that's rough around the edges, well, that's a brawler. That's what that is. A low-level, lower-tier pressure fighter is basically a brawler. Maisy Rose has potential, but at this very early stage in her career, she doesn't yet have all the skills, all the tools to effectively deliver her pressure all the time. What she's missing. That's what makes her a brawler. So to fight, she was following Jasmina around in a straight line, trying desperately to get within striking distance of her. This is a byproduct of Maisy not being able to cut the ring off effectively. We talk about that all the time here on the channel, that there's a difference, a noticeable difference, in following your opponent around in a straight line and cutting off the ring, closing off the exits to what is a moving target, and that's very much what Jasmina was. Jasmina, who's taller and longer, light on her feet, and put distance between herself and Maisy Rose. Enough times she was able to consistently walk Maisy into punches, straight punches and counters. This is what Maisy needs to work on. Cutting off the ring. It's pretty much the same stuff that Shannon Ryan needs to work on. Shannon, who's also going to be boxing on this same show. Shannon, who's also on the bounce. They need to work on the same stuff. Closing the distance effectively and safely by cutting off the ring. That's moving parallel to your opponent, with your opponent. Instead of just darting at them and following them in a straight line, you move where they move. You move with them, meet them in the corners, and then pin them down. Easier said than done, I know. All things are. Maisy Rose needs to work on moving forward. It's the same stuff that Shannon Ryan needs to work on moving forward, because they're both pocket-sized for their divisions. They're both small fighters, small in stature, with small wingspans. Simultaneously, both aggressive and both close quarters fighters. There's a good way to go about doing that, a better way than what we've been seeing. So that's what they both need to work on. But Maisy's moved down to flyweight, where Gabby Fundora just became that division's undisputed champion. Was that 2 weeks ago? An area of opportunity for Maisy Rose. Not because I think she's ready for Gabby. She's nowhere near ready for Gabby. But because Gabby unified all the titles, in all likelihood, when she comes back, she's going to move up in weight. She's going to drop all the belts she won, at which point somebody like Maisy Rose, if she plays her cards right, can pick one up. In time. Maisy's only ever fought in a 10-rounder once, so she needs more of that, more 10-rounders. Now, we don't know who she's going to be fighting or for how many rounds it's going to be. Is it going to be an 8-rounder, a 10-rounder? We don't know yet. But she needs more rounds, and that's what we do know. Work on cutting off the ring, moving parallel to your opponent and pinning them down in the corners, closing the distance effectively, doubling and tripling up on the jab when you do it. Not even because you're trying to hit the other girl with the jab. You just want to keep their guns holstered so you can get close safely.
without taking any oncoming fire.
It's one way to close the distance, another is head movement. Slip and counter, roll and counter.
Catch and counter.
It's another, catching shots on the arms and gloves as you close the distance to get off your counters. And bending at the waist and knees, smaller fighters of smaller stature with a lower center of gravity can make themselves very small targets.
Tricky.
So there is more work needs doing, I think that goes without saying, and I'm glad that Maisy's coming back. I'm glad that Matchroom is still using her because she's a good fighter and she's a fun fighter to watch. She just needs a little bit more time to develop. I hope they give her that.
Look for Maisy in December.
In men's super lightweight news, a bit of intel that broke yesterday via Forbes magazine that Devin Haney's ring return is being negotiated, and it's a mega fight. Devin Haney is on the comeback trail following his unanimous decision loss turned to a no-decision performance against Ryan Garcia. Signs point to Haney skipping a tune-up fight and going straight to the big dogs in his weight division. According to sources I spoke to with direct knowledge, Haney is negotiating to face Teofimo Lopez in his return bout. The source didn't share dates or money, but Haney and Lopez would headline a massive card next year if the fight is agreed to.
Who wrote the article?
Brian Mazik, who has covered combat sports since 2011. Haney never lost his WBC super lightweight title, as it wasn't on the line against Garcia due to the latter missing weight. Even if Garcia made the weight, Haney wouldn't have lost his title because his opponent tested positive for a banned substance, leading to the no decision. However, because of Haney's inactivity, he's no longer considered the WBC's 140-pound champion. In June, Alberto Puello was elevated from interim to full champion. The governing bodies recognized title holder, and Haney was given a champion in recess title. The undefeated Puello is supposed to face Sandor Martin in a mandated title defense, but a fight between him and Haney is also still possible. Lopez is the WBO champion, and the man Ring Magazine recognizes as the top dog at 140 pounds. Lopez defeated Steve Claggett in his last fight via unanimous decision in Florida. Many criticized Lopez for a less than sterling performance, but he ran his win streak to 5 with the victory. Lopez's last loss was a split decision defeat to George Cambodia, an opponent Haney outclassed on 2 separate occasions. Styles make fights, so those results won't impact what happens if Lopez and Haney lock horns. However, the ease with which Haney defeated Cambodia will likely lead him to being a slight favorite over Lopez ahead of the fight. It is true, you can't forecast what happens between Devin and Teofimo based on George. That's a triangle theory. You have to grade them on some other kind of curve. How does Haney's style fare with Teofimo's? That's how you have to look at it. Now, Lopez's power hasn't been displayed since he moved up to 140. He scored a TKO victory in August of 2022, 2 years ago, over Pedro Campa in his first fight since losing to Cambodia. However, since he stopped Campa, Lopez hasn't won by TKO or even dropped another opponent. Those facts lead to questions about his power at 140. Power has never been a major part of Haney's bag.
Haney can't punch.
He hits like a girl.
An anorexic girl.
He hasn't scored a TKO or KO win since he forced Zaur Abdullayev to retire on the stool before the 5th round of their fight in September of 2019. That's about 5 years ago. That fight was contested in the lightweight division as well. Even without the high probability of a knockout finish, Lopez and Haney are 2 of the more prominent names in the sport. After the Garcia fight and the craziness that followed, Haney is seemingly more popular now than before, though not for the right reasons.
He's been subject to a lot of abuse after that Ryan Garcia fight. Doesn't make a ton of sense outwardly that Ryan Garcia pops hot so people resort to trashing Devin?
And him trying to sue Ryan Garcia for assault and battery, that really didn't help his public image. Not becoming and not what you would expect of a professional fighter.
This will help.
Because boxing fans are fickle and boxing fans are stupid. As soon as you wave a shiny object in front of them, they'll forget. They'll start to forget. This is what he needs.
It's not a Ryan Garcia rematch. I still feel like he needs that, but this will do, at least momentarily.
Lopez is the champion, but from a notoriety standpoint, he is seemingly pushing to find a big name to fight. There was some banter with Terrence Crawford, but the fight with Haney seems much more practical. Stay tuned for more information as it becomes available.
Top Rank is supposed to be doing this. It's not a Riyadh season show. It's not an association with Turkey LL Sheik.
This is just Top Rank, made possible by Devin Haney's free agency. That he's not signed to anybody, so he can go anywhere for any fight. And Tio Loco, he's still a Top Rank fighter. He's been trying to achieve free agency, but to no avail.
My thoughts.
I do want to let them get this fight over the line before I become enthusiastic, before I become excited. It's just what the doctor ordered for Devin, whose stock has been at an all-time low because of the aforementioned reasons. The Ryan Garcia stuff and all of Ryan's supporters tearing down Devin and trashing him.
He needs to fight.
In this business, the sooner you get back out there, the sooner you can start putting distance between yourself and a bad showing, a lackluster performance. That's what Devin needs more than a lawsuit.
Teofimo is a racist.
It's become that much more apparent to that many more people over time that Teofimo Lopez is a bigot, is a racist, and that might help to sell this fight and inadvertently make Devin Haney the hero where he's been the butt of every joke. That there might be a lot of people rooting for Devin, not necessarily because they like him and not necessarily because they like his boxing, but because they don't like Teofimo.
What does it do?
More than Davis versus Lamont Roach, I think. More than Gervonta Davis's upcoming fight with Lamont Roach. I think this fight sells more than that one.
How much?
Gervonta Davis's fights have always hovered at or around 200,000 buys. I think he might actually bring in less than that with Lamont because nobody really knows Lamont outside of hardcore boxing fans, and no one was asking Gervonta to fight that guy, whereas this fight was years in the making. Both Devin and Teofimo reigned as champions at the same weight.
135.
They are campaigning at the same weight now at 140. I'm not predicting astronomical numbers. Somewhere in the neighborhood of 400 to 500,000 buys.
Why?
Well, neither Teofimo Lopez or Devin Haney have all that big a following, but together, the synergy from their fight might be enough to get it there. That and Teofimo's a racist.
That toxic energy.
There are going to be people that really want Devin to teach this guy a lesson, embarrass him, humiliate him, show him he doesn't belong in the same ring with you.
Don't forget the battle of the boxing dads.
Bill Haney and Lopez Sr. make my ass itch. But the banter between them in the build-up could also help to sell this fight.
That too.
This is good news because this is something that the American boxing scene needs. It's time to stop arguing on social media. Stop going back and forth on Twitter and fight. Just fight.
Before we break the fight down, that's my initial reaction.
They're showing up Gervonta Davis by fighting each other, if they do fight each other, that while you're off over there fighting some nobody again, two of the somebodies at or around these weights decided to fight each other.
And it won't be good for your claim that you're the face of boxing if their pay-per-view ends up selling more than yours.
What about Ryan?
There was a lot of money in a Ryan Garcia versus Devin Haney rematch, but if Devin is now fighting Teofimo, who does Ryan fight?
And where does he fight? Because he clearly can't make 140 pounds.
There was some talk about him running it back with Gervonta Davis, but it's hard to imagine that Ryan is going to drop down in weight, even for that fight, knowing what it did to him the first time.
He'd have to be damn stupid to subject his body to that again.
We'll see.
But if Devin is fighting Teofimo, he's not fighting Ryan. So Ryan is going to have to find another high-profile dance partner.
Good on Devin.
Doing this and creating this stir, this excitement, it helps people forget.
It puts distance between him and his performance against Ryan. It gives people some other reason to talk about him.
And finally, in men's super middleweight news, the IBF have ordered Diego Pacheco versus Christian Mbilli. Frank Smith of Matchroom has revealed the IBF has ordered a super middleweight world title eliminator between Pacheco and Mbilli. Smith confirmed that there are also talks ongoing for a Trevor McCumby fight against Diego Pacheco.
This fight won't happen.
Promotional and platform politics aside, Diego Pacheco is already ranked number 1 via the WBO. That's the route that he's been on. And while there is something to be attained, in fighting Christian Mbilli in this final eliminator, it would get the winner a crack at the apple against newly crowned IBF champion William Skull.
I'm not convinced this happens. I think that Diego stays the course, stays on the WBO route, fights Trevor McCumby before he fights Christian.
At which point, Christian Mbilli might fight somebody else in IBF's rank standings. Say, Vladimir Shishkin. He just fought William Skull and just lost to William Skull. Maybe Christian fights him. Maybe Christian fights Jaime Munguia. Since they both seem to be on the top-ranked side of things, there have been rumors about a fight between them. Maybe they fight. But I am not convinced we're going to get Pacheco versus Mbilli next. I think Pacheco stays the WBO route and Christian stays on the IBF route. If they were to fight, stylistically, Diego has the edge.
But Christian's the more maturated fighter. He's the more maturated fighter who's further along.
His quality of competition is slightly better to me than Diego Pacheco's. Christian Mbilli, what you see is what you get. He's a pressure guy. Whereas Diego, he's more boxer-puncher.
Strong.
I think Diego packs more single punching power than Christian Mbilli, even though Christian's the more prolific fighter. He's got more of a work rate. He throws punches and bunches, non-stop.
All round.
Though Diego Pacheco is not a guy you just want to stand in front of, shoulder square, letting punches go. Diego's the taller, longer fighter of the two. That would give Christian the edge mid-range to inside, if he can get there. The problem is getting there.
Christian is the shorter, stumpier, stockier fighter of the two, so within close quarters, he would have the advantage. The problem is getting there. You might have to come under heavy fire before you can get close enough to this guy to land combinations.
Diego can move a bit, manage the distance a bit. Slight edge to Diego Pacheco in a fight that I don't even think is going to happen.
I like either fight. Pacheco versus Mbilli or Pacheco versus McCumby. Trevor McCumby.
Make America great again.
Raw dog Chloe Bailey and make her period late again.
What?
Trevor McCumby achieved some notoriety, some fame, in his last fight opposite the ring former champion Caleb Plant, who he gave a hard time, who he actually knocked down. David Benavidez couldn't knock Caleb down. Trevor did. This is a guy who used to campaign as a light heavyweight, but moved down to super middle. He can punch.
His form isn't too good in terms of nuts and bolts boxing. He's one of those unorthodox scrapper types, but he can punch, he's strong.
And like I said, I'm okay with either fight. A McCumby fight, a Mbilli fight. The real issue is that one fight is easier to make than the other. You try to make that Mbilli fight, it becomes a question of who's going to cross the street, Diego or Christian.
Both sides want to have it their way, on their terms, so that's a problem. The money. The Mbilli fight might be slightly more expensive to put on than the McCumby fight. Trevor McCumby's not with a major promotional outfit, so it shouldn't cost you that much to get him in the ring with Diego.
Huh?
And like I just said, even though Diego has the right style for the job, he's not as maturated as a fighter. I don't think he's as maturated as Christian Mbilli. Christian's been in there with Derevyanchenko. He's been in there with Gangara.
I like Diego's chances against Christian. However, they might think it's too soon to put him in the ring with a guy like that.